Cheers, everybody. Welcome to another Heavy Metallurgy album review. I'm one of your hosts. I'm Marty. Good to see you. Joined by Alan from Heavy Metallurgy and Let's Talk Metal. And Vic Rattlehead is chiming in from
your way. I'll be on the show.
That's Craig Zahler. How you doing, man?
Good. How you doing?
Good.
Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for coming up with this idea and putting it together, taking the time to join us on it. We're really excited to hear that you wanted to do it with us.
My pleasure, as Marty knows, and anyone who read anything I wrote in Maniacs back in the day, or who has ever spent any time with me talking about music for any period of time, I adore Rust in Peace and have a long time affinity for Megadeth. So there's a lot with this band, and I imagine a chunk of our conversation will just sort of be about this band and their legacy, which it's going to be hard not to just say Dave Mustaine and his legacy, as he's the through line and the main songwriter and the front man and the personality and all of that sort of stuff. But certainly when I think of the handful of albums that turned me into a lifelong metalhead, Rust in Peace is one of those, and sort of, like alongside the Iron Maiden Diano albums and probably Carcass Heartwork and a few Sabbath albums, like that's sort of the nucleus. And because it seems impossible, so I won't even try and avoid it, to discuss Megadeth in detail without talking about Metallica, I've always been in the Megadeth camp. I am now. Was and have been for more than 30 years. I'll get into reasons why. And this is not to say I'm a Metallica detractor. I really enjoy a bunch of their albums, but whereas I think Metallica has 11 albums and there are 4 that I don't think are good at all, that I find a chore to get through and just have to have all their albums. Megadeth has, I'll say 18 albums because I'll count Hidden Treasures. And I think And they have 3 albums I don't like. So that isn't to say it's all gold, because it certainly isn't. Yeah. But it's much better batting average with nearly twice the output. And I'll get into sort of all the reasons why. And I understand. I mean, Dave Mustaine is about as divisive as a figure as there is in metal, outside of maybe John Schaefer or some Norwegian guy who killed or ate or burnt something down, or or whatever happened there. But I'm just a longtime fan of the band, and I've followed all of the steps since probably since Rust in Peace. I don't think I was on board before that. I'd heard them before that, but that was the one that made me go back and kind of check out the first 3 and then follow them forward, and just buying stuff like everything that's coming out along the way, like the limited singles and stuff like that, that they've put out. I was just just all the music of theirs that I could get, and so happy to dig in and discuss them at length and sort of talk about the legacy a little bit alongside the new album. And of course, I've ranked everything. I will not do reviews for all the albums, because then we would need to all cancel all the plans we have for the coming week. But I can give concise thoughts on sort of generally where the new one stands and my thoughts about their catalog and career.
Well, right on. Well, to set the stage a bit, we are talking about the 17th/18th full-length album and supposed swan song of Megadeth, called Megadeth. Came out on Black to Black Records. And yeah, I guess the best thing to do here is first impressions, because I know personally my impressions have changed on this record as I have absorbed it a bit more. Since you're the guest here, Craig, why don't you start with your first impressions on this thing?
So in terms of first impressions, let me go back a step or two and say sort of one of the reasons that I've followed Megadeth, let's say Dave Mustaine, for so many years and been such a fan of his music, is I think he is one of the 3 kings of riff writing in the history of all rock.
100%.
And I think it's for me, it's the three best. And there are a ton of great ones, but the 3 that I think just have the most idiosyncratic voices and the largest piles of amazing riffs. It would be Tony Iommi, Jimmy Page, and Dave Mustaine. For me, that's the holy trinity. And I'm not a big Zeppelin guy. I really don't like Robert Plant's upper register. I like when he sings baritone. I like his singing later on in the career. I find him shrill, but still riffs such as the stuff in like The Ocean or Out on the Tiles, which Megadeth did cover. The amount of swagger and the syncopation and all of that stuff is fantastic. So even though I sort of accept more than like Robert Plant, which is sort of my view on Bruce Dickinson as well, I think that the riffs there are incredible. Iommi invented the genre and obviously has a unique voice. And then Dave Mustaine, I think all the hammer-ons that he does and the busyness, but yet flow that he has, and then mixing all of that kind of busy flowing riff craft with really syncopated stuff. And obviously he really wants you to hear the right hand. The break in Holy Wars, you couldn't have a more ringing right hand sound, like just in terms of the ringing of that. So I think this is someone, and Marty, you're a guitarist, I'm not. To me, it sounds like he's tuning regular tuning.
Yeah, it sounds like E standard.
Yeah, it sounds like E standard, and I think there's a crispness and definition with his phrases. I think so. I come at it sort of two ways, because initially with Megadeth, it was, those four in the 80s. I think Rust in Peace is the best metal album of all time. I think in the Megadeth Metallica conversation, I think Rust in Peace is better than Metallica's greatest hits. So that's the end of that conversation. I think Peace Sells is also better than any Metallica album ever made. So to me, they have those two absolute pinnacles. Few bands have anything near Peace Sells But Who's Buying, much less Rust in Peace, and he did it twice. And you can hear something like Wake Up Dead, super aggressive thrash, and then Diana, like that, like Jimmy Page stuff, like total swaggering like that. I always felt that it's like, oh, this is the Led Zeppelin part of this song, except in the context of much darker, much better music. And then Mustaine and Poland soloing all over. That's absolutely incredible. And so I comment my Megadeth fandom as a believer that he is one of the three kings of riff writing of all time, rock, metal, all genres. Clearly, there was a shift after Rust in Peace with Countdown to Extinction and Euthanasia, and to me, he really doubled down on making his choruses super, super interesting. And this is one of the reasons why even when they were doing simpler stuff, I still enjoyed the music, particularly Euthanasia, Countdown to Extinction, but later on, United Abominations and Dystopia. Like, this is a guy who has a great ear for hooks. And to me, there's always kind of a piratical trucker aspect to the Hetfield choruses. And there are some good ones, but when you look at a chorus like the She-Wolf chorus and the chorus in Disintegrators, or the chorus of Scorpion, which is better than any chorus in Metallica's history. And he started shaping these beautiful, really long choruses that are kind of like a little bit along the lines of what John Schaefer does in Iced Earth, and a little bit Manowar, in terms of they're really beautifully shaped melodic phrases, and with nice back and forth. And a lot of I find the better Metallica choruses are just sort of getting out of the way of the riffs. And sometimes Mustaine does that on this album. Sometimes he does it. Just the chorus is a simple idea, getting out of the way of the riffs. But there's like the Scorpion, Disintegrators, Skin of My Teeth, Back in the Day, probably the single best song he recorded this millennium.
It's a great album, overlooked album.
Yeah, and I'll talk more on that later. But I think it's one of the reasons why, I had the experience for every album after Rust in Peace, because Rust in Peace, it's Rust in Peace. So you always, like, for me, I always wanted that, but I accepted the direction that he moved in, because I think his ear for choruses is very good. and yeah, some of the aggression goes away. And for a long time, I thought, well, he's probably not capable of writing things like that, or just has no interest in it. But occasionally he would give you a taste. I mean, I remember after, whatever it was, 7 years after the fact, whenever Cryptic Writings came out, hearing Disintegrators, I was like, oh, he just gave us another Take No Prisoners with a more tuneful chorus. And then She-Wolf was kind of new with all the twin guitar harmonies and all that sort of stuff, but he can do it. And Kick the Chair, that also could have been on Rust in Peace. The ending isn't as good as a song on Rust in Peace, but it's always been there. So I think one of the reasons I've been able to sort of weather it, and I know a lot of people will drop off a lot of metalheads that are hardcore metalheads are going to kind of drop off after Rust in Peace, and certainly don't have much interest in Countdown to Extinction and Euthanasia, both of which I really like. It's because I think he's good at doing more than one thing. And I think he's really, really good at choruses. So my first impression of the new album, it's concise and a bit more streamlined than I expected. I feel the last two were quite a bit more ambitious. And this one, I felt it was pared down. I think it's almost, unless you include bonus tracks, which aren't part of the proper running time, I think it's almost 40 minutes even. And as compared to something like, 13 is like 60 minutes or something like that. They were a lot bigger. I feel it was stripped down, and I kind of on the positives, I felt there were no awful songs. There's no Sweating Bullets. There's no Psychotron. There's no all of those other unfortunate tracks.
Moto Psycho or whatever.
Moto Psycho, absolutely awful. Hello, me. It's me again. Like,
yeah.
Moto, call me Psychotron. Like, we don't want any of that stuff. And so it struck me as this is a very consistent album, but it just doesn't have the highs that I was hoping for. And one of the reasons I suggested our doing this show was I heard two lead-off songs, which are two of the three best songs.
Yeah.
And I was hopeful that those, since they were like out as videos, not on the radio, I almost said, but since those were out as singles, and maybe they're on the radio, I haven't put on a radio in decades, since they were out as singles, that those would be the more commercially acceptable of an album that was going to be altogether more aggressive, which was not the case. And I feel... So I think ultimately it's a consistent album. It's streamlined. I mean, obviously, we all know Dave Mustaine is dealing with a number of health issues. I think what's it called, the Vikings disease, the thing that is making his hand kind of clench up. There's a more medical name than the Vikings disease or whatever it is. But so that's there. Obviously, he had throat cancer and treated, and his voice shows some wear. I will say, to his credit, I think a lot of people in this position, after going through something like that, or just aging, would do a whole lot more in terms of melodyne and vocal correction and pitch correction, which is something, because I've done it for myself and I've done it in the studio a bunch of times, I have a good ear for hearing. There's one spot on this album that has a ton of it, but there aren't a lot of spots. Some is obviously once you start layering up the vocals, you can hide it, but like compared to in a totally different genre, someone like Luke Combs, his albums are at the edge of unlistenable. His last one definitely was, with the amount of obvious pitch correction. And so Dave Mustaine, I think, this is a performer who does all this on stage live. I think he was cognizant of that. So the good of it is it sounds like it's really him 99% of the time. The bad of it is his range isn't what it was. So it's sort of flattening out how high he can go, and it's making the melodic contours less shapely as a result. So I think what you have here was a much safer than I expected final album, but one that doesn't have any songs that I think are bad, which there are those I feel on. I mean, obviously Risk is mostly bad. World Needs a Hero is mostly bad. Cryptic Writings has gems. Trust is Dave Mustaine saying, I can make Enter Sandman and it will be better. And he made Enter Sandman and it was better. But that album also has like 3 or 4 songs that I think are just truly awful. So this album has a couple songs I don't like, but it doesn't have anything I think is bad. But it also doesn't even have a song that's as good as the highlight from the last album, Soldier On, which is totally badass and beats the crap out of anything on this album. And I thought it was consistent. It was enjoyable. Certainly hats off to, and I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Dirk Verburen, maybe?
Yeah.
This drummer is excellent.
He's
this
great.
Drummer is phenomenal. This is the best drum performance on any Megadeth album in decades. This guy is so locked in, and Dave Mustaine is letting him run. And I mean, really, like the last time I heard drum fills like this is in, and it's on Hidden Treasures, so people have heard it. I thought it was just a B-side. The Breakpoint by Nick Menza. That was the last time I heard a drummer allowed to get this elaborate. I mean, this is like the kind of playing you always hear in Manila Road, but you don't hear in Megadeth. And so the drum performance absolutely raises the level of pretty much every song. The other soloist, what is his name? Timu Mansari. I'm sure I'm pronouncing it wrong. I'll just call him Timu. He is, I guess my only complaint is a lot of his solos sound like Dave Mustaine solos.
And it sounds a little bit like Marty Friedman, I thought, at times.
There were a couple of spots. Well, Marty Friedman to me used a lot more, and you're going to know this stuff better than I do. Whether
I suck at solos. I don't
whether
know
it's a Mixolydian or Ionian or all of these modes. But to me, Marty Friedman was much more exotic modes, and Chris Poland was a lot of kind of almost weird jazz phrasing. And whereas this guy sounds like he is doing some extra sweeps and some extra flourishes that maybe Mustaine can't do now, and I'm not sure if he ever could. But they almost sound. I feel like a lot of his solos sound like they were written by Dave Mustaine and performed by Timu, which I wouldn't say about Petrelli. I wouldn't say about Friedman. I wouldn't say about Poland. Like those guys to me had their own sounds, which isn't to say his solos aren't good, because a couple of them are really good, but they just in terms of where they're going melodically, it's that. But the album, ultimately, it has a couple of songs that I think are kind of okay, 3 that I really enjoy, but nothing that I think matches their best stuff, even from recent years. I mean, again, compared to back in the day and the Scorpion on System Has Failed, I mean, those are the 2 best songs they made this millennium. But even the song Endgame on Endgame and a handful of others sort of scattered throughout, including Soldier On the last one, this album lacked the highlights I was super excited to hear again. But it also is very easy 40 minutes because it doesn't have Sweating Bullets and Psychotron and Motorcycle or any of those songs that I really dislike. So that's my general take.
What do you think, Alan? First impression?
Yeah, first impression similar to Craig's. I was hoping for something pretty adventurous, especially with the announcements that this is going to be the last album. You always want to see the big legendary figures go out in a blaze of glory. And even on the last album, The Sick, the Dying, and the Dead, Mustaine, still really nailed it, really hit folks over the head with something that, was very aggressive, very adventurous. So as recently as the last album, it was very clear that, he still had it. He could still deliver that kind of material. At the same time, yes, when you're in this age range, the difference of a couple of years can be pretty large. So
especially with a degrading health condition,
Especially, you put those things on top of it, and you never know from one album to another how it's going to turn out. So I was hopeful that, yes, you could deliver something of that caliber one more time, but was also realistic, understanding that maybe that wasn't going to play out that way. Yeah, as Craig mentioned, you had some really good videos to help kind of get hype going for the album. I've also learned, though, to temper my expectations off of, the lead videos. We all saw, Lux Eterna for 72 seasons, and then the rest of that album got heard. So it's like, okay.
I'm with you on that, Alan. I'm completely with you on that. That's maybe the only song I like on that thing. That is a hard listening experience. that they should,
Yeah.
they should pay their fans to.
Yeah, I have not gone back to that album since it came out. But yeah, so sometimes yes, the video is a great harbinger of things to come. Sometimes the video is the only thing that's worth making the video for, and they have to roll it out. So you never know. Once I heard it, and like Craig, I've heard it maybe 5-6 times. I have not spent tons of time on it, but I've heard it enough to have a good feel for it. First impressions were, yeah, this feels like it is a safe album and definitely scaled back from the previous album, really from the past couple of albums. That there's nothing wrong here. Yeah, there aren't any total stinker tracks, but there's nothing that blows me away either. It doesn't, like you said, Craig, it really lacks those highs and lows. It's all kind of scrunched more in the middle. It's very consistent. The runtime is pretty short and to the point. It's 10 songs and almost exactly 41 minutes if you don't count the 11th track being the Metallica cover. So 10 tracks, 41 minutes. It does have the feeling like, all right, Dave and company, and perhaps mostly Dave, needs to get in, do the thing, but also wrap it up. That this isn't meant to be a 60-minute odyssey. It's just like, let's call it a day, put this together, but let's not belabor the fact either. Other thing on first impression that I noticed was production wise, it feels like not balanced great. Dave, of course, voice and guitars are very upfront in the mix, understandably. Feels like the rhythm stuff is a little bit in the back. I would have liked it to be more upfront because he's got some really good guys working with him, of course, as usual. But it feels like they're a little bit in the background sonically. And I've tried listening to this like on a couple of different sets of speakers, headphones, car, desk, and all that, because I thought maybe it's just an equipment thing. But it always feels like they're in the back seat a little bit, and it makes the album again feel a little bit small. It's like all the emphasis is just.
May I interject 1 second, Alan?
Yes, please,
do you have the actual CD of this?
I do not. Nope, I've been.
The CD
to it
is
online.
It sounds way louder, way brighter, better.
Does it? Okay.
There's something a bit compressed about the streaming, which I was listening to it streaming, and I got the CD at Walmart of all places, and like, wow, it sounds so much bigger and fuller in.
Okay.
I think
I've tried listening to like different streams of it too. I haven't just been going to like the same stream because yes, it's like maybe one upload of it wasn't as good as the others or something. But and it's not a huge thing. It's not like a really terrible production, but it always just seems noticeable to me that you hear what Dave is saying and you hear the guitars clear as day, and I have to pay a little bit of attention to hear what everybody else is up to behind those two aspects. So my first, that's kind of my first take on it. Like, I wish it, was a more adventurous album, and I just wish it, sounded a little more fuller, for the ways I've been listening to it.
All right, for me, first impression, I really like the 2 singles they dropped. Getting the album and sitting down listening to it, first impression, it's very front loaded. There's a stretch of songs from. I don't have the list here in front of me, but they really kind of fall into a mid-pace, feels like euthanasia type of vibe. In fact, before I got accustomed to the songs, the album, I kept telling myself, this doesn't even feel like a thrash metal record. It feels like a hard rock / metal. It sounds like Megadeth, don't get me wrong, but that fire, where's the fire in the belly type of thing. And it was just there in the last couple albums. So, I mean, but you start spinning this thing over and over again, and it is instantly memorable and instantly catchy. So it didn't take long to unlock little nuances in some of these songs here and there that appealed to me. And initially my thoughts were Dave's kind of playing it safe for obvious reasons with the vocal stuff. But you know what? The more I got to listen to it, and really he's not doing anything wrong or bad. There's a few. He sounds a little bit tough in Ride the Lightning, where, older Dave Mustaine trying to recreate young James Hetfield. Even old James Hetfield can't recreate young James Hetfield. So I give him a pass on that. But, really his voice isn't bad on here. He's not really taking any chances, but and the songs that do get up and get more complicated and aggressive, the riffs do a lot of the shining here, and we'll get into that here as we start talking about the individual tracks, I guess. But yeah, I think my first initial run through of this wasn't disappointment. It was, I was fine. Like, I like it. It's good. But I was like Alan. I kind of wanted him going out guns a-blazing. I wanted Rust in Peace 2 Electric Boogaloo. That's what I wanted. But there's hints of that here and there, but we'll get into that. But yeah, like I said, listening to the songs over and over again, I do like it. There's a lot of cool emotion in some of the choruses, and the feel how he interacts vocally with the guitar riffs. One thing that did surprise me here, I don't know if you guys, the lyrics, there's a lot of cheesy lyrics on here. I kind of anticipated this to be a bit more introspective or contemplative, or, acknowledge the passage of time, which he does on the last note.
Once.
He does it once.
He does once.
And the way he does it, it's sad in a way, but it's very matter of fact. He just seems like, this is it. This is what I've done. This is, run it into the ground. I ran it into the ground, and this is the way it goes. And in that aspect, I found it kind of, a little emotional, but it just he seemed very pragmatic about the whole thing. I anticipated more introspective, kind of a sad vibe. This is it. I'm really doing it. This is going away after you. Don't get much of that. It's just, machine gun on meth and other goofy little things here and there in the lyrics. I'm just like, oh, wow. But anyway, yeah, let's talk a bit about the tracks. We'll start with you, Craig.
Yeah, I mean, some of my excitement for this album was Tipping Point. I heard this thing, I saw the video and watched this a couple times, and this is a really good example of something that happens with thrash. And let me go back to what Marty said in terms of if it's I don't think it ever sounds like a hard rock album, and I wouldn't have a problem if it did, if it were good. But it's definitely, there's a ton of this, and basically all Megadeth post Rust in Peace, there is a different mixture, with the exception of Risk, which was just kind of its own stab at pop metal or whatever that thing was, beyond a gigantic mistake. I think this band has been dialed in more just making heavy metal music, and then you get some thrash cuts. Like Countdown to Extinction, Ashes in Your Mouth is definitely the most aggressive thing on there, but even so, more up-tempo things like High Speed Dirt, still not really a thrash song. Like, I think they Rust in Peace, there's still a fair amount of thrash going on. There's obviously a lot of progressive stuff and metal stuff as well. So that's something where I feel, even though, I would love for that to come back, and you get tastes of it with the Disintegrators, like Mission on Mars, the last couple cuts on the previous album. There's one where he's straight up singing the vocal melodies from Black Friday because the song is moving at that tempo, and he could just sing the lines from Black Friday with different lyrics. So I'm okay for him to drive in either lane. It's just, if he's giving me heavy metal songs with that land with the chorus, I just want that chorus to be really good. So Tipping Point is one of the thrash songs for the most part. Yeah. And it has sort of a new wave of British heavy metal opening lick. Yep. And then sort of the song Killing Road on Euthanasia, there's definitely a part of this that is in the same key. And then it leaps into almost a D beat and lots of room. Like, this is a Dirk showcase in terms of all the rooms. He's doing stuff like Horg does on In My Kingdom Cold and Ian Pace does on Burn, just making it just really, really exciting. And I think really exciting even if you're not a drummer, but especially exciting if you are a drummer. That thing where he's moving around and throwing in those like errant hi-hat fill, those little the errant hi-hats, like throwing in those little extra splashes.
It's really cool how they pan the kit too. It's like the
beautifully recorded. Yeah. I agree with you, Marty. I think this is a really well-produced album. Yeah. I think I don't know if there's a difference between what's streamed or what's on the disc. I think this is probably the best sounding album they've done in a while. Like, the last album was good, what like had solid production, but felt sort of overproduced and it didn't have this clarity. And I think the guitars, you can hear the buzzing of the cabinet, which a lot of veteran bands, including unfortunately for you, Marty, your most beloved Halloween, who I enjoy, but some of that stuff just sounds plugged into me. Like I'm not hearing the buzzing cabinet the way I hear it in here. I'm not hearing the right hand the way I hear it here. So this is a really good example of, I think one of the differences between thrash and heavy metal, like traditional metal, is thrash is, I feel, the tipping point, I guess, pun intended. I think thrash is the tipping point where riffs are often more important than vocals. And so this chorus, that tipping point, and that's all that the song, that tipping point, like that's all it requires. And it's good. Like that's all that they needed. And it's not, I think Hetfield and a lot of people fail when they just do the super simple, like just you're saying the title, you say it a couple of times or whatever, but he's picking good notes, better than the ones I'm singing probably. And, but there's a lot of momentum. I think this is a really good song, and the rising momentum of the chorus is really good. Now, this is unfortunately for me, and I can't get past this. I feel this song would have been as good as Soldier On and the other best song of the last like 3, maybe 4 albums. But I think when it gets to the mid-paced part at the end, and the vocal refrains are not good. The "you won't define me, you won't deny me, I'm at my tipping point," and it's that whole it's the mid-pace section. So I feel this song is an 8 or better, but then the end section is like a 7, 6.75. So it doesn't bring the whole song down to that level, but endings are very important to me. I would rather have a song that's flipped with a really good ending and like a pretty good part going before it than this, and it doesn't ruin it, and I think it's still enjoyable. But I think this song, if it just wrote out those choruses the way they are and didn't have the slowdown, which I didn't love the transition, but then I think the vocal idea is when he's like, "You can't deny me, I'm at my tipping point," I think that's okay, as opposed to the raging chorus for the rest of the song. But really like phenomenal, like really good energy, phenomenal drumming. I think probably the best drum performance since Nick Menz's work on Breakpoint. DeGrasso had some good stuff, though. Actually, DeGrasso's finest moments are on the MD45 album, but I digress. So I think it is a very good song that becomes kind of a good song as a result of that ending section. So interested to hear your opinions.
Alan.
So yeah, one thing you can usually count on with Megadeth albums is that they're going to start well. Dave or whoever helps him put together the running order of the tracks, they understand the importance of come out of the gate swinging. And yeah, this is one of the stronger, fiercer tracks. I agree. It's one of the thrashy tracks. They are as close as we're going to get to a really solid thrashy track at this point in Megadeth's career. So yeah, they come out right away, good guitar licks, big ripping guitar riff. They want to hook you immediately and make sure that you're on board. And, it's largely successful that way. This is also, Timu's first album and I guess last album with Megadeth. So they take the opportunity to right away too, to showcase here's the new guy. And guess what? He can shred just as well as the Chris Brodricks and the Marty Friedmans. That's always been a thing with Megadeth too, of course, having good personnel on board, especially when it comes to who else is playing guitar. Dave's never been selfish in that regard. He's more than happy to have another real gunslinger on board, and it's kind of expected at this point.
He has songwriting credits too, so he was invited in.
A lot of songwriting credits, more than almost any other album in terms of shared, or more than any other. It's a lot of shared songwriting credits. Yeah,
he's definitely willing to share the spotlight there, and it works great. I was disappointed Kiko wasn't going to be back for another album. I really liked his performances in the past couple of Megadeth albums. But, Timo, of course, has the pedigree working with Winter Sun and stuff. So I don't think anybody was worried that he wasn't going to be good. But again, they don't leave any room for doubt. First track up front, here it is. If anybody's, unsure how this is going to go, let's just lay those fears to rest right away. As far as the chorus goes, yeah, musically, Craig's right. He writes really good choruses. The refrain on this one, though, just the repeating of, this is the tipping point. I don't think that sells me. And part of that is it feels like it's supposed to be one of those, angry, pissed off, aggressive moments. But at this point in Dave's career, I feel like he has a little trouble delivering that in a really believable manner. There are times he can sound a little tired, where his voice, isn't as strong as it used to be. And so, again, lyrically, this is supposed to be, one of those, screw you up in your face kind of, macho attitude things. But it doesn't come across that way, the way he sings it. So the chorus is fine, but just going through the tipping point. And then again, like you say, Craig, at the end of the song, the vocal melody, it's not conveying the attitude that the lyrics are meant to convey. So that throws me off on the song a little bit. Musically, really good. Vocally, or maybe, maybe with slightly different lyrics, maybe if they weren't trying to make it this, we're at the breaking point and shit's going to go bad, but you're not singing it like it's going to go bad. So there's a little disconnect for me there on that point. But otherwise, the album's off to a good start here. So, Marty, your thoughts on the opener?
Yeah, fully agree. It's obviously a debut single for the album. It feels like they still got the fire in the belly. It feels like a thrash anthem. There's a lot of energy. Dirk, precise, energetic. He really adds a lot of push and flair to these excellent riffs. And there's points in the song where it's Dave's most aggravated sounding vocal performance. He puts a little dirt in with it too, which was a nice touch. And Timu, ever wondered what he was going to do? Just check out Winter Sun. I mean, Winter Sun is a clinic for shred guitar. It's like the riffs are shred riffs. I mean, everything. There was no doubt in my mind when I heard he was getting the job that I'm like, perfect. I mean, perfect. Go out, guns blazing. That's why there was times on this album that I heard a little bit of Marty Friedman. I don't know if he was doing that on purpose or maybe it was already an influence. And you're hearing, because really some of the solos he's playing here are fantastic, but they're not Winter Sun insanity shred solos.
No.
He's playing in more of a focused Megadeth mindset. Not saying that Megadeth solos by any means are dumbed down but it's a different style for sure. But he adapted well. I think he put a great spirit into this stuff. And it got me wondering, we're starting off with kind of a thrash anthem with Tipping Point. We're going to get into the next song here in a minute. I remember going somewhere with Parker, and the next song, I Don't Care, comes on. He's like, this kind of reminds me of Peace Sells, the song Peace Sells. I'm like, and I got to wondering. I started listening to the album a bit differently. I'm like, did they kind of set this up like a tribute to their career in stages? You start off with the aggressive thrash song, and then you got the Peace Sells kind of bass dominant punky thing, and then you got the one song that could fit on Rust in Peace. I'm like, and then there's a whole bunch of songs that feel like Euthanasia and Countdown to Extinction. I'm like, I wonder if he and then closing the circle with Metallica at the end. I'm wondering if it was a conscious decision, the way they put these songs in order. So maybe that's why we didn't get a big flash in the pan track at the end, although the last two Megadeth out records have been really good. So maybe that's a theory that I'm kind of pulling at straws here a little bit, but I don't know. First song, Tipping Point, I think it's great. It really makes me excited for what's to come, and that brings us to the next song, I Don't Care.
Yeah, so I think this is definitely one of the couple worst on the album, and these are the vocalisms that aren't my favorite. The things that when it begins, with first off, I Don't Care it's always a question. I mean, I know Obituary did it as well. It's always a questionable thing to sing about, because if you're passionate enough to sing about it, you probably care. It's always questionable. This is not but backing off of that, the worst vocal idea on the album is in this song. The gotta know. That's Moto Psycho stuff. That's Psychotron, Sweating Bullets. That's that's in that world. The riffing is punk. I don't like punk music, so with the exception of Turbo Negro and whatever you want, like obviously some Motorhead leans into punk, and there's some new wave of British heavy metal that has that in it, but I don't really like punk music. And the riffing here is pretty punky, and the attitude is pretty punky. And then the gotta know, I think is the worst refrain on it. So I just think the song is okay. I don't think it's I think there's only one bad part, which is the gotta know, but the rest of it is just fine. And yeah, as I said, there's some songs I don't have a ton to say about. I don't have a lot here. I mean, these riffs aren't interesting. I would definitely not know out of context that Dave Mustaine wrote these. And the singing isn't enough. The singing isn't in a manner that is going to elevate the song for me, but just sort of reinforce the punkiness and glibness. If you don't care and you're not interested, don't put the song on the album and give me something else. There were some B-sides, not the Ride the Lightning cover, but there were some B-sides that he released from this album already, and they're both way better than this song. They're not better than the best songs on the album, but they're definitely better than this one. So that is my I don't know or I don't care. And yeah, I'm not into this tune.
All right, Alan.
Yeah, this is the punky song on the album. I'm glad he included one song that leans into that a little bit, because that was part of Megadeth's sound at times.
Yes.
And Dave, was infamous, especially early on, for having that very kind of snotty attitude. I really don't give a fuck what anybody thinks or how I come across or anything. So it does kind of play along with your theory, Marty, that there is homage being paid to a lot of past phases of the band's history. And so I do like that there's one included. I wouldn't want another one included. I think it would take over the album and start to be a problem. But yeah, the one track, it's okay. And he does come across pretty convincingly with the I don't know. You get a little bit of that, attitude and snot and sneer in his voice, which works well. But then, yeah, you get to the gotta know. And it's just like, oh, this was going all right. And now that's part of the song that has to be factored in too. So it's like, well, crap. But yeah, I don't think I dislike it as much as Craig, but it's not one of the album highlights for me either. It just feels like, and I got that same kind of sense, Marty, that, there, to an extent, this is the farewell tour, and he is kind of revisiting, some of the past territories. And this was the song meant to revisit, the punk influences, the roots, the attitude of, the very young Dave Mustaine.
Yeah. So
it has some, I don't mind the punky part of it, but he did drag it down with the by gotta knowing just a little bit too much. Marty, what's your take on this one?
Yeah, I mean, this song was a grower for me. I disliked it initially, but you're right. Punk is part of, especially early. Look at Anarchy in the UK off of So Far So Good. I will take this song over Anarchy in the UK cover any day of the week, and it does highlight Dave's snotty attitude perfectly. It's a catchy song. It's fun. I like punk music, so I don't know. This is a passable. I would have maybe liked this middle of the album, break up that run of mid-paced Euthanasia style. But I think it's a fun, energetic track, unlike any other on the album. Is it the best song on the album? It is not. But that leads us to number 3, Hey God.
Hey God! So
question mark and exclamation point. So it's like, hey God?
Hey God? Yeah, I'm not sure the line reading on that punctuation.
That's a tricky one.
This song is better. This is a good example of he's kind of doing pretty straight growled verses that aren't that interesting. They're just character verses, but then the shape of the chorus is pretty nice.
Nice.
Sometimes I feel so insecure that as I walk these streets alone, like that stuff is stuff he does nicely, and it elevates the song. And then eventually it gets into, and maybe Marty knows what this is. So there's a chord progression that's rampant throughout this band. It is also the chord progression of episode 666 by In Flames. The dun-na-na-na-na-na, like whatever that chord progression is.
It's all like I Dream of Jeannie theme.
It happens. It happens like 3 times on this album, this chord progression. And whenever you hear it, whenever I hear it, I think episode 666. To some extent, it is in Hangar 18, but this this goes into that chord progression at 149, and then it goes into the twin lead version of that, and then over that, and this is well produced. Like I think this verse isn't much of anything. This chorus is pretty enjoyable. Then it gets into the episode 666 chord progression into the twin leads, and then he vamps over it with the stuff like the "Can you hear me?" all those things that he's throwing over it. So it sort of arrives at a climactic moment. I mean, it's a little more like, you know, traditional rock or metal as opposed to something you would get in a thrash tune. But this is the stuff that at this point he's really good at maximizing material like this, and just like adding in the extra little leads. The drum fills after the second chorus are phenomenal. So he gives it some energy, and otherwise it's a pretty mellow mid-pace kind of track. But that ending of it moving in towards the harmonies, and then him vamping and giving you sort of better vocal ideas than all of the verse ideas, and sort of pushing it to a climactic spot. It works. I enjoy this. I enjoy this tune. Would definitely rather have had this in the number 2 spot. Not a standout on the album, but I think the album has a lot of these where it's like the chorus is enjoyable enough that some of the other stuff you'll just sort of accept, and that this one has the enjoyable enough chorus and then those elements at the end that make you feel like you've gone someplace, that it's a journey and a landing moment. So an enjoyable tune, not a highlight, but fun.
All right, Alan.
Yeah, this one for me is a little more on the average or plain side. It's a song. I mean, the first song, had, the, thrashy fireworks. The second song had kind of the punky attitude. This feels like the first song that just kind of settles in a little more. The big thing that stands out to me with this track is lyrically, there's, a very strong reference back to, again, Peace Sells. And with the whole, what do you mean I don't believe in God? Talk to him every day. But this song starts with, "Hey, God, sorry I've been away for a while." So it's the music, but I thought you talked to him every day. Apparently you haven't been lately. But also just the juxtaposition of, in the first one, questioning, what do you mean I don't believe in God? Well, here he's directly talking to God, which of course also plays into Dave's conversion, in Christianity over the years, which sure. So vocally I like, or lyrically I like that. There's a connection to that old album in a very clever way that it's put together. This is also a song that starts to have some of that contemplation you were asking for in the album, Marty. Yep. You've got, verses in here that are very much looking at that, that there's so much I still wanted to do with life, but it feels like time is slipping away. The years go by, like days. So you start to get some of that reflection from Mustaine in the lyrics here, which is appropriate. There should be some of that on the album, and here's our first, kind of strong instance of it. So this is one lyrically I think is really nicely put together. Musically, it's not horrible. It's not a standout. So yeah, kind of, an average track overall, but I feel like here Dave is writing from the heart a little bit more, but also still having some fun with the lyrics. He's still finding a way to let's revisit that kind of, famous line from Peace Sells and put a new spin on it. Over to you, Marty.
Yeah, this one felt to me a bit like it was a lost track from Euthanasia. It's not very exciting, but I agree with Craig here for sure. The chorus definitely lures me in. This track is built on simplicity, and it's Megadeth, so very melodic, colorful melodic choices, that do shine out against the predominantly crunching verse riffs. So, yeah, the chorus lured me in, and it's really a well considered written song. I have really nothing bad to say about it other than I wanted more fireworks, but we're going to get that here in a second with track number 4, Let There Be Shred. Definitely my favorite song on the album for sure. Craig, what did you think about this one?
Yeah, this is, I mean, to me, there are two songs that I could argue are the best. I would probably give it to this one as well. This was the other one I heard ahead of time. And when I heard Tipping Point in this, and at the time had the misconception that these were going to be the more commercial tracks, I was braced for awesomeness. So I guess people out there can say I'm stupid, because I've had the hope for some version of Rust in Peace Part 2 that I've nourished for 35 years of my life. And you would think after enough experiences and many albums that I enjoy and that I can stand behind.
Endgame kind of poked close, I think. Parts of Endgame, parts of System Has Failed.
System has failed, and parts of Endgame. Yeah, absolutely. There are, on just an aside on those, System Has Failed. That album, man, that in a way is the biggest disappointment for me, because the first 7 tracks, which is 6 songs and an intro, that is the best run of songs on any album of theirs. That other than Rust in Peace, which isn't to say that the highlights there are better than the Peace Sells things, but to have a run like Tears in a Vial, Kick the Chair, Back in the Day, Scorpion, Blackmail the Universe, it is a run that they have nowhere else. But then the last, I think, 5 songs happen, and they're not good. And so that like in some ways that's my favorite album after Euthanasia, which I think is much more consistent but doesn't have those highlights. But yeah, it's tough. So that experience, that like when I heard Kick the Chair, when I heard Back in the Day, when I heard Disintegrators and She-Wolf on Cryptic Writing. So there are those things. And when I heard when Let There Be Shred and Tipping Point were the singles, and I had the misconception that these were going to be the more commercial songs, and it was only going to get more aggressive from there. 35 years later, I still haven't learned my lesson. And I mean, it just, but that said, this band has 18 albums, and I like 15 of them. So like, that's a great legacy. It's sort of like in a way with King Crimson is my second favorite band of all time. I like the Adrian Belew era tremendously, except for Beat, but I wanted another Red. I wanted another Lark's Tongues and Aspic. I wanted another In the Court of the Crimson King. And I just accepted that the Adrian Belew era was never going to be that other stuff. Just like I eventually accepted what they were more of a traditional heavy metal band oriented towards choruses. But so this thing, like when I say Dave Mustaine, he is retiring as one of the kings of riff writing. Like Iommi, and I can find amazing stuff on Forbidden. I am a defender of that album. But on 13, man, there's nothing. There's not one riff on that album that I think is great.
It's a very boring album.
There's nothing. And then the Heaven and Hell album, which we know is a Black Sabbath album, there are no riffs on there. So Dave Mustaine's final album has stuff where you say, holy shit, this guy is riff royalty. He's one of the 3 kings. And the riff for this, you can't even sing it. All that whining hammer-on busyness that, like you've been hearing, from this guy kind of from the get-go. It's fantastic. And the gruff vocals in the verse are really good. That's the sweet spot for his personality vocals. And it's not the overdoing it cartoonish, Sweating Bullets, Psychotron, Motorpsycho. It's where it just sounds right. He just sounds great. And it's really, really good. And the solo, the Dave solo over the mid-pace section is particularly good. The chorus is this is really the on the day I was born, a guitar in my hands. Like he's just running it. The all of that stuff. He and I think this is something where he feels the flow of it in a really nice way. And there's a very tasteful interweaving occasionally it reminds me of Sabotage, even though the band sound kind of nothing alike. But some of that, like front voice guitar, front voice lead singing, and some of the interweaving, and I think he just does a beautiful job of it. This song, it has the break in the middle, which reminds me a little bit of Ashes in Your Mouth, and the Timu solos are really good in this. I guess worth pointing out, like, Dave's solo is wailing and bluesy rather than shredding in the song that is Let There Be Shred. So and I don't know if that's an indication of what he can do and where he's at. It's good playing. It's just the song is called Let There Be Shred, and he doesn't shred on it. Timu shreds on it. And to me, this Timu solo, which is one of the couple best on the album, to me, I really wouldn't be surprised if Dave Mustaine just wrote it and played it at half speed, showed it to him and gave it to him. And then Timu added some flourishes. And I don't know the process of coming up with solos in this band. Obviously, this band is Dave Mustaine. Dave Mustaine is this band. And so I don't know how hands-on he is with that. But the guitar fills in these verses are great. Those embellishments that's probably my favorite lead playing on the album, are all the embellishments there. But yeah, I mean, it's very, very good. It's probably my favorite. There's one other I kind of rank about the same, and I would rank Tipping Point above both of these if it didn't have that ending. But very enjoyable, high energy tune, and the other reason I was super excited for this album.
Alan.
Yeah, it's the standout, or arguably the best track. Agreed. Like Craig said, vocally, Dave's in the pocket where he wants him to be on this one. Doesn't sound silly. He's not going off into any characterization. All the solos are great. The track just fits really well. This concept, of let there be shred, it could fall apart as cheesy if not done well. And I'm sure there's some people that look at that song title and kind of roll their eyes. But at the same time,
I love it.
It works because it's very true, especially for Dave. As we mentioned earlier, this band has always been about hotshot guitar heroics. So why wouldn't you acknowledge that here? And if we're kind of following with Marty's theory of how the songs are, again, sort of surveying the whole discography, we're probably at the point here where, you want to revisit and touch on, acknowledge that Rust in Peace, was this, amazing guitar-driven album that to this day, people absolutely fawn over, and rightfully so. So, yeah, the idea of having the track just be Let There Be Shred, because we're Megadeth. That's what the hell we do. You know that. There's no reason not to acknowledge it, and they did it with a really good barn burner of a track. So, yeah, big thumbs up for this track. Marty, you've already said it's your favorite track, but would you care to elaborate?
The verse riff, that oh my god, I get so fucking excited when I hear that. I'm like,
it's air guitar heaven.
Oh my god!
Like, how do you do that with singing? And that's something where, who knows? Like that is a different skill set, being able to do those kind of hammer-ons and move that way around. Yeah. It's phenomenal. Yeah. And sorry.
Oh no. That's that whole, and I'm glad also you mentioned the bluesy vibe, because there's a lot of that bluesy. It reminds me that Dave was very blues based is in his lead playing for sure, and it's part of his personality when it comes to playing guitar. So it's I'm glad it kind of cuts through on here on the most complex, energetic, aggressive song on the album. Yep, it's his signature. It was in my notes. I just wish there was one more song like this towards the end. Just give us one more. Mm-hmm. Again, that verse riff gets me so fired off. And whether it's Timu playing all the solos, I don't know who's doing it, but there's a verse, there's a solo, a verse, a solo. It feels like the trade-off in like Polaris or Holy Wars or Take No Prisoners, that back and forth solo. Yeah. It's like that feels like this could have been on Rust in Peace. It could have been, instead of Dawn Patrol, you could have put in this one, and love it. Great song, absolute banger of a track. And that leads us to Puppet Parade, track 5.
Worth noting, Dawn Patrol, the low-hanging fruit of Rust in Peace, it's an intro. It's not a real, like when people get bent out of shape over that, it just leads into
I still like
maybe
it.
the greatest
Yeah.
metal song ever recorded. It's cool. It sets a vibe. I like it, but it's not a song proper.
Agreed. Yeah.
It's so Puppet Parade. This is another at the bottom for me for sure. This chorus I just find a chore to get through. It's what is this? The when the blood runs cold.
Yeah.
And it's just dreary, and it's really long, and it's rhythmically really regular. I remember reading interviews with Dave Mustaine and stuff like that, and he generally talked about, you know, how rhythm was the most important component for the riff. And I think maybe this is one of the reasons I've always responded so well to both his vocal ideas and his riffs, because there's all that sort of syncopation. And man, this chorus could have been AI. And it is just autopilot, and it's just kind of dull. There is, and this is also, I mean, this is I think the worst song on the album. And this is also the one where I said there's a song where you can hear Melodyne, like vocal tuning, and it's the open section here around 3 minutes. And because they backed off enough of the other instruments, and I suppose there's a chance it's an effect, but to me it sounds like vocal tuning. And the whole section, the strings tied to my back, like that section, and it's just okay. You know, like this is the verse is just kind of talky attitude, and then you get to this really mundane chorus. This definitely would be this one and the second track are definitely my least favorites. And it's not bad, but it's just average, and the chorus feels really long, and very much like when it begins I was like, oh man, we're gonna have to go through all these lines again. And it's not whatever Angel and the Gambler or whatever that made it is.
Oh no,
where you're just
repeating that refrain now.
What was the name of this song again? Oh, just a minute, you'll hear it.
So it's not that, but this song is just mediocre. So that's all I have to say about it.
Yeah, the chorus on this one feels very flat, and just every word feels like it's drawn out for at least, you know, half a second longer than it needs to be. So it's just, you're slogging through it. Another thing that I'm not crazy about on this song, again, going through the lyrics, this is Dave playing into that, you know, the underdog, black sheep kind of thing. So it's like, you know, yeah, I have to kind of prop myself up and put up with all this. And, what have I ever done? I'm a king without a crown is one of the lines. And it feels really out of place here, because you've set this up as your big final retirement album, and the entire freaking metal world is celebrating you as, you know, an innovator, you know, one of, you know, the three legends of riffs, one of the guys who invented thrash metal. Everybody's celebrating your career and pointing out that, yeah, you're one of the truly big names, one of the real tentpole kind of guys, and you're trying to sing a song, you know, where you've got that kind of things aren't so great, and I'm having to just, you know, kind of, you know, begrudgingly push my way through life while things are, you know, not really going my way. I think things have gone your way pretty damn well at this point, Dave. I think you can quit complaining about that.
Right.
So again, there's just, it doesn't feel right for this album for him to still be trying to play that particular card. Sure, for phases of his career, I get why he played that card so much, but this doesn't feel like the time to go back to that. And I will say overall, I don't feel like he does a lot of the whining that was characteristic at certain points of his careers. There's a lot less of some of the histrionics and ranting that became too much of a thing on some songs and some albums. He pointedly started dialing that back a few years ago, and said as much in interviews that he's like, there's enough things pissing people off and dividing people. I don't need to be doing that anymore, and hasn't so much, which I thought was an astute observation by him. But this one, it's still kind of like, you know, yeah, you know, I'm still fighting the system. The system's still pushing down on me. It's just like, dude, really?
Yeah.
I don't think you're one of the wee huddled oppressed masses right now. So this song just doesn't, the character of the song doesn't fit where the reality of where Dave and Megadeth is at this point. So yeah, a slogging trek through a chorus and just a concept that I don't think really fits the reality. So not one of my favorites on the album. Marty, your take on The Parade?
I don't feel as upset about this one as you guys do, but feels like another straightforward track. Could have been on Countdown or Euthanasia, and this is more of a emotional grower than it is a hack and slash, fretboard antics type of song. Yeah, I will agree. Chorus is a little bit of a slog, but I did, however, enjoy get a little bit more of that retro thinking about things in his past a bit. And I'm assuming the mechanics behind the music business and how they use up and abuse musicians, if you will let them. And that's kind of how this track felt to me, a little bit more introspective, maybe, times of his career and life. I mean, obviously, the Mustaine legacy is music, but the family has branched out into other areas as well to develop and make money from. So obviously the music business has been gone quite well for him. And part of that is he's got writing credits on some enormous Metallica records as well. His own career has been amazing. He's got gold records, all that stuff, but there's checks coming from multiple places for sure. But he's had his boots on the ground in a working environment that is not out for the artist most of the time. You got to fight and scrap, I think, to get your piece, which he certainly has. So yeah, I get what you're saying, Alan, but I do kind of like, if we're looking at a career retrospective type of album, I think this was probably part of Megadeth's career, the hard times. And I think that is, I think I could be completely off on the meaning of these lyrics, but that's kind of what hit me over the head. So I don't know. It's not a super great best song on the album, but I like there's a bit of an emotional return on this track, whereas certainly isn't Shock and Awe. But what were we going to say, Alan? I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no. I was going to say, yeah, if you're right, and yeah, you're kind of looking at it as that sort of past tense, I used to be in that position.
Yeah.
It would make more sense and kind of click better. And you mentioned this song feels like it could have been on something like Countdown or Euthanasia. I think I probably would have liked the song. It wouldn't have, kind of irked me if it would have made sense back then for him to have, been in that mode a bit more. But yeah, I don't know. I'm reading this more as like, the present tense as opposed to past tense, which maybe I'm reading it the wrong way.
Yeah.
Hey, songs of people complaining about things often go over well. It could be as simple as that. Let's write a song complaining and people will resonate.
All right, which brings us to track 6, Another Bad Day. Zahler.
Another optimistic lyric. So,
yep,
slightly better than the previous one. This is we're kind of in the rut of the album. Unfortunately, for me, I find this run not particularly good. So the sliding lick at the beginning, that little muted thing, and then the whole band comes in, and that's really you really hear kind of how well produced and dynamic it is when they pull back a moment to have the whole band come in. I mean, it's a trick we've heard on something like 1,000 other albums, but it's something that can kind of reset your ear and just pull it back, and then they come in. And it's pretty standard. I mean, this to me seems like a below average, something that could have gone on Countdown to Extinction or Euthanasia, that sort of thing. It's pretty open. When I think of streamlined Megadeth, I think of something like this. The chorus is slightly good, like the another bad day. You get a little bend, so there's something there. But real, like if this is average, I feel this song is here. I like it slightly holds me, but whereas like Puppet Parade, I find legitimately a chore particularly when the chorus begins. This one, I'm with, like the hook is slightly better, and I think this is a song like the previous one that is completely about the chorus hook. And so if this song is if the previous one is a 5 on a 1 to 10, this is like a 5.25. So a real marginal upgrade and very far from high praise. So,
All right.
Alan?
Yeah, lyrically, yes, this is another one, woe is me, down and out kind of thing, which I already mentioned that doesn't quite fit with the perception of where Megadeth's at this point. My issue with the chorus on this one is it's just the song title and they repeat it 16 times. It's not like it's a long title. Again, Angel and the Gambler, Dave's like, it's another bad day. 16 fucking times.
Yeah.
I had it nailed down after the first 8 or 10. The going back to it that last time or two. And that's something just in general, not just about this song, songs in general will wear on me. If they go back to that chorus refrain one too many times, I'm out. I just am. Pagan Altar did it on their last album with the debut, the lead track on that most recent Pagan Altar. Good song, but they say the title of the song something like 18, 21 times. I'm just like, nope, can't listen to this. This is driving me nuts. So yeah, I agree. This is again one that's kind of similar to Puppet Parade. It doesn't have that dragginess that Puppet Parade has, but it's just saying the same few words 16 times. No, thank you. I guess the last thing I'll say is it does overall feel, if you can, again, removing that, major irritant, this does, again, feel like something that could have been a Countdown or Euthanasia. I could see this song having been made into a video that MTV would have tried putting into rotation to help the album along during that era, during that kind of early and mid 90s phase for the band. So there's something there, but it gets a bit lost for me because they're beating me over the head with the same 3-word phrase. Marty, is it another good or bad day for you over there?
This to me felt like Hey God Part 2, but with a worse chorus. I mean, this is my least favorite song on the album. But having said that, it's a straightforward track, but I think it's a solidly constructed song. I mean, all the mechanics are there. It hits a lot of key Megadeth markers, as in, very melodic main hook, melodious flow in the verse riffs and vocals. So, I mean, yeah. And then they kind of ruin it with the chorus. So I don't know. This was a kind of a dud song to me. Again, we're in a run of tracks here that are all very similar. And like I said, I really like the way the front half of the record feels, and I like how he ends it. But this is a slog. It's a slog. And there's some good songs. There's some good shit happening here. But yeah, we're moving up to Made to Kill, track 7.
So Made to Kill is, on its surface, a more aggressive track, more ambitious. Well, it's more ambitious. I don't even think that's on its surface. It has a lot more stuff going on. And this has been a thing with some of the efforts for Megadeth over the years, like we obviously had the thrash era, and then the more concerted effort to make a lot of music that has hooks and like vocal hooks as opposed to riffs, and dial back the aggression. So sometimes when there's the really aggressive thing, it just feels like there are a bunch of aggressive parts thrown together. And that's how I feel about Made to Kill. Like, there are some good ideas here, like jumps into the 6/8, and then and it's like, okay, we've got all this sort of energy, and then it goes to like almost a D-beat thrash. And it doesn't really feel earned. Like, I feel it doesn't feel like this flows together. It just feels like there are some more aggressive parts put together. So something about this song just doesn't flow to me. I mean, I enjoy it more than the previous two, owing to all of these changes. And this is something where I can say, maybe in the future, like I mean, occasionally with a Megadeth album, the two most notable being Dystopia and United Abominations, that I walk away from at a time and I come back, and those albums really grew on me. I think that those are their two most consistent album since Euthanasia. Not necessarily the best, but definitely the most consistent. And this is something where I feel like there are a lot of parts, and there's a kind of fast moving 6/8 thing. There's a D beat thrash section, but in terms of like the vocal, like there isn't like there's a lot of movement and excitement, but it feels a little bit like one of those songs. And actually, there was one on The Underworld Awaits Us All where it just felt like we're just putting a bunch of ideas here. And just because a bunch of ideas are played together in sequence over time doesn't make it a song. It just feels like a bunch of ideas, and you're just sort of leaping around to different, now it's duple meter, now it's triple meter, now it's the fast part, now it's a slow part, and there isn't a through line that's pulling me through. So although I enjoy that this is more exciting and it's more varied, I don't think it's all that much more successful. And it's more interesting, and it has more action and activity rather than it cohering. And definitely some of the songs that are chorus oriented, like in terms of ones we've already discussed, the Hey God, I think is better than this because it coheres more, even though this one clearly has more excitement and is seemingly like a harder, more aggressive song that has sections that are actually thrash and then has that 6/8 part that's a little bit more in almost like a power metal world. But yeah, it doesn't stick. Like of all the songs on the album, this is the one where it's hardest for me to actually recall stuff, other than there's a lot of activity. But it's, I get a lot of activity is better than Another Bad Day said 75 times in a row, or that Puppet Parade dreary chorus. So it's a slight upgrade, but I feel that there is, using some of these parts in a different fashion, I feel a good song could be made out of some of these parts, but I don't feel like this is it. This feels pretty assembled and just active for the sake of going through parts, and you have phenomenal musicians and you want to use and you want to show that you can do it. So not really a success for me.
Yeah. At this point, I'm starting to wonder if Puppet Parade is the least successful parade since Exodus's Lunatic Parade. Maybe parades just aren't a metal theme.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I would agree with Craig's assessment on this one. It is definitely a more energetic, aggressive song. And that's needed at this point after the past two songs. So it's placed well in the track list, kind of, shake you awake a little bit if you're starting to, get distracted. And there's a lot of cool stuff that happens in here, but it's not necessarily spliced together that well. Like, yes, when that little D beat section hits that you mentioned, Craig, it's just like, oh, wait, what? Really? Okay. Kind of cool, but was that supposed to be there? Is that where it fits? Nah, not sure. I'd summarize this one by saying it's, a fairly enjoyable song simply because of the energy level. It's fun, but it's not one of the better constructed songs on the album. If you're wanting to see really good songwriting, this one's not put together that great. If you just want something that's a little bit more of a banger, especially compared to the past, 2-3 tracks, then okay. Here you go. Here's Megadeth ramping it up a bit. So it works on one level, doesn't work on the other level. Marty, what do you think of this one?
Yeah, they need to ramp it up a bit more here. And the good thing about this track, Dirk gets a little bit more time to shine on here. This track kind of starts off with that crushing tribal drum rolls and punchy thrash, like a D beat, a galloping thrashy D beat. But that's around the 1 minute mark. But the track kind of alternates between a similar vibe found on Another Bad Day and Puppet Parade for me. But I do love how they ended. A massive drum fill and the way they pan it. It's very exciting. You get that very colorful, exciting drum fill at the end of the song. But this is a step in the right direction. Like I said, at this point, I need a little bit more energy. They hint at it here. And that brings us into Obey the Call, track 8.
So I referred, there's an earlier song, Tipping Point, where I was like, oh, this song is an 8. But then the ending with the slower version of the longer vocal refrain and the slower thing is like a 7, and it goes down. And so sometimes Megadeth gives you the song that just kind of leaps up to a complete different qualitative level. Mm-hmm. Such is a song called Obey the Call. as you have something that's pretty dreary. What are the it's like and the ponds will rise, and this thing is this. It's not too good. Obey the call. Like whatever that is, no one is liking this. It's hard for me to imagine a person who's like, yeah, that chorus. But who that individual is a yes, obey the call, singing along, you cut to the Man-O-War crowd, like 100,000 people, everyone knows every word. And you cut to the Megadeth crowd, this thing's going on, and people are just staring.
Time to hit the beer booth, yep.
Yeah, it's not good. But then, holy shit, it leaps into this up-tempo section.
Yeah.
And this is, Mustaine is, I don't know, guilty is maybe not the right word, but he, several times, he has buried the best riff on the album, not just the track, but on the album under a solo. Now, there's buried the lead, and then there's buried by the lead. So the first instance of this is Ashes in Your Mouth on Countdown to Extinction. That thing is phenomenal. The second instance of this is Endgame. The it's like the most it's like the best riff he wrote in the last 30 years. It's under the solo of Endgame. So the best riff on this album is under his solo. It's under the second. I think it's his solo. It's the second solo in this thing. Another like it's phenomenal stuff. And so you have a song that really for three. I'm trying to remember the proportions. Let's say 2 hours, 2 minutes and 50 seconds or so of this song is kind of pretty good with sort of a chorus that's grating. And then it leaps into this section, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is the band that made Rust in Peace. Like you completely hear it with that section. So you have this end section that's like an 8/5, and then the obey the call. Like even that stuff, it's like where was this? Please, more of that. But let's dial the proportions, turn the first 2 minutes and 50 seconds into a 10-second arpeggio clean guitar intro, and then give me the ending. Give me the ending for 5 minutes. I will pay $500 for that version of the album, sir, Mr. Mustaine, if you will record that, because this is the third time that Endgame riff, Ashes in Your Mouth, and now Obey the Call on this, where I think the best riff on the album is completely under a lead and not at all featured. Really, that one on Endgame is absolutely phenomenal. I think that's one of the best riffs ever, and it's just under a lead. It's phenomenal. So Obey the Call is like in the end, I think as a whole, this song isn't really much better than the previous. It's sort of because it's really like it's pretty dreary for all of the stuff that's at like mid-tempo, but when it leaps up, it is showing you stuff that like few people in the history of music are writing riffs and coming up with stuff like that end section. So very hard to rate a song like that. Just like it's hard to rate Cryptic Writings as an album because it has 3 great songs, a couple passable ones, and a ton of things that I think are mediocre and bad. So yeah, I mean, listen to that. I think it's under the second solo, and I think that's Dave. But that riff, I feel, is probably the best on the album. I mean, the Let There Be Shred has stuff that competes with this, but it's just I don't know anyone who is putting like highlight 10 out of 10 riffs and just playing it under the solo. But Ashes in Your Mouth is, I think, the first time I ever heard it in metal, where someone's like, "Well, the best riff on the entire album is under a solo." And then Endgame is the same thing. So, yeah, I mean, the end of this song really wakes me up, and I really enjoy it. So that's kind of Obey the Call. And even the Obey the Call, like his delivery of that at the end is really good. Like that's the guy on Peace Sells. That's that guy. Like that's absolutely that character. He's just in it. It's just furious. It's great. The ending is great. The rest of it is kind of shrug.
Yeah. Alan.
Yeah, it's a song that takes a while to get off the ground, but when it does, it becomes fantastic. It plods along, and that chorus is feeling like, oh God, the parades come back around the block. Oh man. But yeah, you're right around that 3-minute mark. All of a sudden, it's just like, okay, let's take the governor off and just, full throttle the rest of it. By the end of the song, I'm sold on the song. It's just like, oh, that lame chorus, that was so 2 minutes ago. So yeah, it's almost, yeah, and it's kind of backwards from what you talked about with the tipping point, Craig. Where, that song's doing really good for a while, and then the ending kind of, yeah, tails off. Here it's the beginning of the song that isn't really clicking, and then the ending, yeah, just leaves you like, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
yes, sir, I will obey the call. And it kind of highlights your point that having a strong ending is going to leave a much better impression of a song than having the strong start but the weak ending.
Yeah.
So yeah, the song has a critical flaw in those first few minutes, but it does redeem itself pretty nicely the rest of the way home. So yep, at the end of the day, obey the call. Okay, yep, I'll take it. And if nothing else, I think it's a good example of what's going on with the album. That, as we've talked about, none of these songs are really built to be all-time classics. You don't have things that are just peaking start to finish, other than maybe Let There Be Shred. But none of these songs are total bottom feeders either. Even the ones that have things we don't like, they also have things we do. Marty, your take on this one?
It pretty much mirrors what you guys. I basically, I needed at this point in the album energy, and the song starts off like another one that came before it, and I think I wrote in my notes, this track feels like a hard rock track with teeth. But then thankfully the last quarter of the album, all of a sudden the switch is flipped and there's more energy and the solos and this little bit more double bass comes in. It feels a little too late to me, but still, at least we got something. We got something here to wake us up out of the hypnotic, the sheen that kind of comes over you from, all these loping mid-pace tempos. And that brings us to track 9, I Am War.
Yeah. So, and what you said in terms of the mid-paced and all that sort of stuff, like, I think this band has done it really well. So this is something where, although, 35, 36 years later, I'm still hoping for Rust in Peace Part 2, despite the fact that I'm not a complete moron, and I've been buying all these albums and spent hundreds and hundreds of hours listening to them. I did accept basically what they turned into with Symphony, with Countdown to Extinction, and so
that was a natural progression, because what would they have done?
When they deliver those, they deliver those well. Like, I really like Euthanasia. I like Euthanasia and Countdown to Extinction more than Killing Is My Business. So I think when they're delivering the choruses and those kinds of hooks and mid-pace things, they're just doing really good heavy metal. It's not thrash anymore, but that's fine. I like a lot more heavy metal bands than I do thrash bands. In terms of like what I spin regularly in my catalog, there are definitely more like metal bands that I spin regularly than there are thrash bands. And I think largely because so many thrash bands kind of lean into punk and hardcore singing that I do find off-putting. And so I Am War, I really like this song. This was the other one when I said that there are two that are my favorites. It's Let There Be Shred in this one. I think this is a really good example of like the best of what they were doing with Countdown to Extinction. I mean, it kind of feels a little bit like the title cut for Countdown to Extinction, but I think it's better. And I think there's a tasteful, understated quality to this that is sort of atypical for a band that doesn't do a lot of understating. But the chorus, the I am war, I am hurt and pain, I am misery, or whatever, the I am loss and sorrow, I am war, and the rounded way of it starts with the I am war and ends with I am war, and you kind of go up the mountain and come down the mountain. There's just a confidence like this. I find this one of the most emotional songs on the album, if not the most emotional one. And there's a real confidence. And again, like maybe a weird comparison, but some of the interplay with the vocals and the riffing reminds me a little bit like Power of the Night, Sabotage. And it's just a really nice interplay, and it's not aggressive at all. I could see like that someone who's not enjoying some of the other ones that we've not enjoyed would think this is more of the same, except I think this is a very pretty chorus. It's very understated. The spaces are nice. I find it an emotional experience, and in a way it's like the song where there are no, like, I feel it's maximized for the kind of song it is. and definitely the best of these. And for me, you know, other than Let There Be Shred, it's my favorite song on the album. So it's just well done. I think it's tasty. It's also nice that like the previous song went on the upswing at the end, and then this, which I think is really solid, and I'll talk about the next one when we talk about the next one, but I enjoy that as well. So I feel it's not like, oh, the album loses its thread and never comes back, which is unfortunately the reason that I don't sing the praises of the System Has Failed all that time, because I think that loses the thread after Back in the Day, particularly the song after Back in the Day, which I think is awful. And so this is a nice continuation of the better quality, albeit this is obviously at the energy of a mid-paced. I mean, this probably is the closest to a hard rock song on the album, but I think it's tastefully done, and his voice sounds good. Like he's writing to where he can sing, and he's pretty exposed. Like I don't think this is a lot of Melodyne and tricks getting him there. I think he's writing within the parameters of what his voice currently can do, what his vocal cords can currently do. So really good song, very solid song that I find emotional, and a tasteful song that doesn't have anything to prove, but just is really well done.
Well, Craig, I just want to assure you, you're not alone holding a candle for that Rust in Peace Volume 2. I've waited through this many Halloween studio albums for Keeper of the Seven Keys Part 1, Part 2. And still haven't got it. So, yeah.
Yeah, but you bought the wrong album. You should have got Gamma Ray's Land of the Free, and you'd have been all set.
I bought that one. I bought the first Iron Savior album. I got the Unisonic second album. You know, there are some folks have come close.
Here's my mega stack.
Yep. Some folks have come close, but not quite there. Okay, back on track for this track. I Am War. Yeah, this one, to me, it's kind of the inverse from Made to Kill that we talked about a few minutes ago. Made to Kill had the energy, but the construction was kind of clunky. This song is very nicely constructed, but could have used a little more energy. As Craig said, it does feel like maybe the most hard rockish of the tracks. Really well written. It flows really nicely, but I'm listening to it and I'm thinking like, I wish this one had maybe just a little more teeth to it.
Sure.
Compared to some of the other tracks. So that's, I'll leave it with that. It Made to Kill had all the energy, but just, it was parts spliced together. This song is really well composed, but doesn't hit hard enough. So my take on that one. Marty, what's your take on it?
Yeah, I really like the chorus on this one. Like Zahler mentioned, it's very emotive, which is a nice touch. And the main riff kind of puts me in mind a bit of Hangar 18 and the bouncy nature and higher note choices. But, you know, it's another mid-paced track, and really at this point in the album, I think I really need a fourth quarter shot of adrenaline here, which really doesn't come, but thankfully on the last track here, the last proper track, the last note, we get a little bit of a advancement, I think, in the songwriting for me anyway. I don't know. What do you think on this one?
So this one is, I just had I'm War stuck in my head. I wanted to pull this one up. So this is, to me, I don't know if you have this experience when you listen to System Has Failed, but when I heard Tears in a Vial, I was like, oh, this guy writes a good Iced Earth song if he wants. Something that feels almost a little bit more power metal, and I don't know if it's the chord choices. I know Schaefer is like leans in writing the same kind of minor key or whatever, but when I heard Tears in a Vial, it sort of sounded like that. And this song, the verses feel that way. And I will say, I was really, at this point in the album, I Am War, at the end of Obey the Call sort of brought me back in. I Am War, I was like, that was really tasteful. That was really good. This song begins, and when it gets into the verse, I got chills, and I was like, oh, this is really going to be something special. And then it isn't. I feel that the verse is in that same Tears in a Vial, somber thing, and it felt like it was going to build up to something pretty monumental. I didn't know if it was going to get thrashy or go, like have the ending of Hangar 18 or what was going to happen with it. But it's pretty reserved, and I feel that the verse is the best part of it, and the chorus I think is fine, but not exceptional. And I also feel like in terms of, I think when I correct me if I'm wrong, but I think when he comes in with his solo for his, like, his last note in, I think he comes in acoustic or clean channel, which kind of not the direction, like I suppose you could do that. And then that whole ending is acoustic, and it's all fine. Like, I think this song is enjoyable and is better than most of the ones that we're talking about as like kind of a slog or whatever. It's better than all of those. But I thought the verse riffing and his singing in that, I was like, I was set up for something that was going to be great, or at least something not great, but at least very good. Like the song Victory at the end of Euthanasia. Like, that is very much a roll call song. Manowar does these a lot, kind of alluding to all the different things. And I feel like Victory really felt like, at that time, I felt like, oh, this guy, this veteran of metal for whatever he was at that point, a veteran of metal for 10 years, rather than 40 or whatever it is now. But that song felt like that was the cumulative experiences channeled into a composition. And this one felt that way in the verses. And then it gets to the chorus, and it's kind of pretty good, but not as good as any of the other ones. And then there isn't anything incredibly special going on instrumentally. So if I feel like on Euthanasia, it would be sort of somewhere in the middle of the second tier of songs. It's not Victory, it's not Killing Road, it's not Countdown, not Train of Consequences. Like, all of those are much better than this. This feels like a second tier Euthanasia song. But when the chorus began, I have to say, like, I thought, oh wow, this is going to be special, and I got chills. And this is a band I've lived with who made, one of the works of art I consider the single greatest made during my lifetime. And I'm now coming on the last track that this guy is going to record, assuming he holds to that. And I think there's a fair chance he will. I think he's different than a lot of people who keep coming back. I think there's a chance he could come back. I think there's also a chance he comes back writing something and having a bunch of other players do it, in some other capacity or as a producer. But I was prepared for this very good verse to turn into a phenomenal chorus and amazing riffs and solos and stuff like that, and it didn't happen. It's kind of this very good verse turns into a pretty good chorus and some solos and then an acoustic thing and then some narration, and then it's out. So I think the song is enjoyable, like it's a 7 or so on a 1 to 10 for me. But Alan said earlier, this is a band that knows how to start albums. They also really know how to end them. Highlights are all over the final tracks on their albums. And this song isn't even in the top 3 on this album. And it's the last song on their last album, talking about the end of their careers. This song kind of needed to be great, and it's sort of good. So that's my feeling on it.
All right, Alan.
Yeah, I had the same kind of thought process. Megadeth knows how to go out on a high note. Album after album, you've got classics as the final track. And so, yeah, my thoughts were kind of the same, because I agree. This is, a pretty good song, not bad, but it doesn't feel like a highlight song on the album, much less in their career. And as the final track on the final album, it does feel like a little bit of a letdown. And as a quick aside, I agree, Craig. I think there's a good chance Dave is seriously done, with recording stuff. It would be interesting if he maybe, took that John Oliver role and kind of like, here, I'll put stuff together for y'all behind the scenes, but I don't need to be out there trying to, perform it myself anymore. That'd be a cool, interesting idea to see play out. So yeah, it doesn't have the typical, fire and brimstone and thunder that you typically get at the end of a Megadeth album. Thinking about it, perhaps that's a conscious choice, and I can't speak for the man, obviously, but it is noticeably different from how he normally ends an album. But this is
I think this is a conscious decision. I think you're right.
This is a notably different album, because from the get-go, he's made it clear this is going to be my last. This isn't something where he's decided after 6 months of touring for them. I was like, okay, that's going to have to be it. I'm done. He's going into this. He's like, this will be the end. And I want to write my own epitaph. And he's gotten to. It's something a lot of folks and a lot of bands don't have a chance to do. So I can't help but feel he did put it together this way on purpose, that this time he didn't want the album ending with everybody wrecking their neck and the horns up. If you do that the way you've done it so many times before, you've got people immediately saying like, oh man, he's got to come back after that.
Hope.
Oh,
You give people hope.
Yeah, it's just like, look at the way that, and it's exactly what happened with like, The Sick, the Dying, and the Dead. That's got, a killer track at the end. We will return. And it goes out full guns blazing, and everybody's immediately just like, yes, Dave's coming back for another one. Can't wait to hear it. And a big part of that energy and enthusiasm is because, the album is good, but that last track ends on such an up note. If he did that on this album, would he just spend all of his interview times addressing the fact that, no, asshole, I really am done. I was serious about it. Yes, I know the last track's incredible. No, it's not a promise of anything else. Shut up and go away. Leave me alone to be a cranky old man. So I think it was intentional that, this is it. When you're packing up your office, when you're taking the things off the wall, putting them in the box to, carry out on your final day, some people, maybe have that urge to just, run around the office, screaming obscenities or whatever. But I think for most folks, it's more just like you're shutting things down. Go ahead and let it shutter, close up shop, and let's think, what's the last thing I want to say? And that is something that, I do like, the last, little, couplet he delivers for this song feels very apt. And I love the fact that he worked the word sneer into it. That's always been the way folks have described his vocal style, that he has this very distinctive sneer.
Yeah.
And it's right there. It's the key rhyme to make the last vocal line click. That he finds a way to use sneer and then rhyme it with the very last word that he's going to record for a studio track. So as an epitaph, I think it does work well. But I do agree with you, Greg. I wish there was that one more shot of adrenaline. I think we all do, but and it didn't have for this album. Maybe it's better that it's not.
Yeah, two things. It's deliberate. This guy, every breath this guy's ever taken his entire life is deliberate. So it's a choice. Sometimes I don't like the choices. It's just, if this was going to be this sort of song, and that's fine. Like, obviously, it would be amazing to end with Rust in Peace, Polaris, or Five Magics, or My Last Words, or Wake Up Dead.
Yeah.
Any of those. But I'm saying this as a person who embraced, probably more than many metalheads, euthanasia in particular. But hit like the hidden treasures, like 99 Ways to Die, Breakpoint, Go to Hell. I like those. I adore a lot of the stuff beyond just the 80s and beyond Rust in Peace. I just don't he's come up with a bunch of great choruses. I've already done the roll call of like 12 of them after Rust in Peace, and this isn't one of them. So I feel if it was like going to be this sort of song, which is very much oriented in this chorus more than any chorus on the album feels also, I should have said this before, constrained by his vocal range. And I feel like this chorus needed some other high notes. It needed some disjunct leaps. It needed more contour, because this is like it's real. It's really contained. And if you come up with something that's really good, like I Am War, you can work in those confines. But I just don't think this was it. So this is definitely what he wanted to do. It's his thing. I could definitely take something like Victory as the closer, or something like Scorpion, which I think is an incredible song and is better than most of his thrash songs, and is not at all a thrash song. So I'm open for it. I just, if it was going to be a more mid-paced thing and somber thing, which it is both of those, I just want the chorus to land better and the hooks to land better. He's written a lot of mid-paced hooks that are pretty great, and this doesn't have them. I mean, I think to me it sounds like Tears in a Vial, but not as good as Tears in a Vial.
Okay. Marty, what's your take on it?
Yeah, I think you got it pretty right here, Alan. I really do like the fact that there's a very dark, matter of fact sense of finality, the way the song matures. I like the acoustic guitar coupled with the electric guitar. There's some nice start-stop transitions thrown in here during this time. Great drum fills and beat patterns going throughout it. Lyrically, we finally get a bit of weight and acknowledgement of the end on this one, obviously. And has it all very impactful, matter-of-fact way. I really like the fact that, well, I'm just going to read it. They gave me gold, they gave me a name, but every deal was signed in blood and flames. So here's my last will, my final testament, my sneer. I came, I ruled, now I disappear. That to me, the impact of that was kind of like, wow. It isn't like, I live on in my music, my legacy. No, I'm gone. Not only am I gone from this band, from music, I pass. I'm just gone. And that to me was like, wow, that's kind of an interesting, I don't know if I would have played that card that way, but he did. And it fits perfectly with who I perceive who he is. I obviously don't know Dave Mustaine. We see, how he interacts with the media, and I'm sure he's not the way he's sometimes portrayed all the time, but I thought that was a very awesome way. That was kind of the point of this song. I think what happened before that last line was the delivery system to get us to here. And I think it ends really well on that spot. And if the album ended there, I think it would have been more impactful, but I also really like the choice of doing Ride the Lightning, the Metallica cover. What did you think about? I mean, already
I've talked about this before. If I'm talking about an album, a bonus track is a bonus track. I heard 2 other bonus tracks that were for different editions, and they were both better than the worst cuts and not as good as the good cuts. I mean, Ride the Lightning. It's Ride the Lightning with phenomenal drumming. I'm not a fan of that song. I like that album less.
I like the song. I think it's a good one.
I think a lot of the vocal ideas in that aren't good. Actually, some of them I liked hearing Dave sing more. I think with Hetfield and a lot of particularly the first 3 albums, he's kind of shrieky, but in a way I don't like. Like, I love Halford shrieking, and that sustained shriek, that's an amazing thing. Ian Gillan shrieking, that's an amazing thing. James Hetfield shrieking, not so much. So I think it's a solid enough cover of a song that I think is one of the weakest on Ride the Lightning. I don't think it's a bad song, but I think, like, I listened to it. A couple of vocal choices were good. Obviously, he couldn't do the please God help me, like that super high thing, and so they just put in the other voices. But I don't consider this part of the album. I listened to it a couple of times, but I stopped the album when the album proper ends. It's a bonus track, and it doesn't. If it were the best cover ever or the worst cover ever, it wouldn't change at all how I estimate the album, because it's a bonus track. And I think it's a solid. I mean, for me, some of this vocal parts, and correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, I think, to me, James Hetfield always sounded like a baritone who, to get those high notes in the 80s, he would shriek. Whereas Dave Mustaine to me sounds like a tenor. Like, I've always assumed like his vocal range is just, like, his natural vocal range is higher. So some of that I think actually fit his voice well, and he didn't have to like shriek to get there. But I'm not a huge fan of that song to begin with. It's, as I said, it's fine.
Yeah, my big thoughts on this were that it's a very nice gesture. Because if there's one thing that Megadeth and Mustaine were known for, besides cranking out really strong guitar-led albums for the past 4 years, it's fighting with Metallica and constantly bitching about Metallica and all of that. So I see this as a very nice symbolic gesture at the end of his career to make it very clear that, look, it's water under a bridge and all sins are forgiven. If you're covering somebody's song, it's a sign of respect or admiration. You like something about them. You don't tend to cover songs by people that you really still hate or despise or want to beat the shit out of or think are a bunch of assholes. So the fact that, he's like, I'm going to cover, one of the classic Metallica songs and put it on a Megadeth album, I think it kind of lays to rest, is there still any animosity between you and the guys? Of course not. If there was, I wouldn't be covering their song. So I think it's a nice gesture. Do I need to hear it musically? Not really. Like Craig said, now I do like Ride the Lightning, the song. No problems with it. But I don't need to hear a cover version of it by Megadeth. So I've played it a couple of times, and yeah, I'm the last several times I've played the album, I've stopped it before it played. So I like what it represents. Again, closing chapters, tying up loose ends to make sure that there's not going to be any lingering questions of, oh, well, Dave goes into retirement where he can continue to pout and fume about his never-ending rivalry against his arch nemesis Lars. It's like, no, all that's been put to rest, along with everything else. It's all tidied up. We haven't talked about it, but even the cover art in a way feels like it's that. It's like, here's your last image of Vic, and it's Vic being consumed. It's like,
which is, I think, pretty cool. It's
this is an ending for the
Yeah.
character as well as the band. Even the mascot is very clearly being laid to rest here, and but not shrieking, not going that sort of thing. Standing there, looking classy, letting the flames consume it. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust, Vic to back to the radioactive ooze he crawled out of back in the day. Marty,
sorry, just a question on because I haven't looked on in Ride the Lightning, the Metallic. I mean, it's right here. I could pull it out, but in this first songwriting credit is Dave Mustaine. When you look at Ride the Lightning, is the first credit Dave Mustaine? I kind of doubt it, but I don't know.
Yeah,
I do not know either. Good question.
I'm going to answer that question.
Inquiring minds. But I will say, while you're looking for that, Craig,
he is. So I didn't take it quite as philanthropic and peaceful as you did. So here's the difference. Here, last name of the four names, Dave Mustaine. Here, first name of the four names, Dave Mustaine.
Yeah.
So not to stir up shit, but when I saw that credit in there, I said, is this to sort of let everybody know how things really were? And by the way, I wouldn't doubt that. I think there are a lot of great riffs there. It's mainly the vocal ideas, the someone help me, please God help me. Like that's, I'm not into that. But what did you think of the cover?
I really thought it was done. You look okay. I know when they first broke up, he said, "Don't take my songs," and they took his songs. And they went on and took Mechanics, which Dave wrote, and made the Four Horsemen out of it, which I think I like a little bit better than Mechanics.
Oh, it is much better, dude.
He went in there to say "fuck you," and he sped it so fast. Here, there's a sense of care. I don't think it's sped up. It sounds really good to me. He played everything verbatim. The solos sound great. They sound almost note for note. And I like the fact that you get this simple little, written by Dave Mustaine, James Hetfield, Lars Ulrich, and Cliff Burton. Because he did have a hand in it. And however he sees it, this is coming from him and his side of the story. And I think he did a really good job on it. And I think some of the best early Metallica songs have Dave's imprint on them. Seek and Destroy, Jump in the Fire, Phantom Lord.
Fire. That is when you talk about riff royalty, you can hear it in Jump in the Fire, man. Yeah. That's complete Mustaine winding front voice guitar. Like that is his voice.
So, but I think it's really cool, and the extending of the olive branch, he could have went in here and sped it up. He's got a much better band. He could have sped this up and really ripped it out, but he didn't. He paid complete tribute to it and, wanted to end his career as it started, essentially. I mean, granted, there were other bands before Metallica, but still, Metallica was the one that he really had an impact with, and they went on to do enormous things with, with some of the music he contributed to. So I think it's cool he ended it with it, and I think it's a smart thing to do as well. For him, laying an old rivalry to rest, and the fact that every single person that's into Megadeth and Metallica, they wanted to hear this. I wanted to hear it. I heard it happen. I'm like, fuck, I don't care about the rest of the album. I want to hear that. I'm that guy. I'm curious. And I think he did a really good job. At the beginning I mentioned, an older Dave Mustaine trying to sing young James Hetfield it's not going to happen. And like I said, even old James can't sing young James. So I don't know. I think it was a pretty interesting way to end it, and a smart decision. They did a good job, and it sounded with this production. Fuck, it sounds really good too. So.
Yeah, no, and with Dirk, I mean, to me, that is Dirk.
Though he kind of plays it like Lars did it too. I don't think he wasn't given free reign on this. I think play it the way it's on the album.
There are some extra tasty moments, and then also some of the stuff where you can occasionally hear Lars swim a little bit with the beat. I don't think he swims at all. Like, I think he's just. I mean, he's a phenomenal player.
A phenomenal player, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's great, and I'm a huge fan of Lars. Like Lars,
yeah.
I think some of the roughness with some of his playing or misbeat results in more interesting playing. Like there are a lot of drummers, and I'm certainly not one of them, who unless it's metronomically perfect, you're going to a lot of my favorite players are not the most technically proficient. And, Lars, For Whom the Bell Tolls, I think in terms of drumming, one of the most important drum songs in metal, if not rock history, that there's where those accents come in and how front voice that drumming is. So he's great, but Dirk is having some fun. Yeah. In closing, so this is a band where I enjoy most of the catalog. I placed this. I'll sort of run through. I've got my top 18. I'll just run through it quickly, and it is the three I don't like: Risk, Super Collider, and The World Needs a Hero. Which even that one has Disconnect and Dread and the Fugitive Mind, and that's it. Everything else I like to some degree. And so at the 15 spot, 13, and the new one to me lands at the 14 spot, which is why Respectable was hoping for more. 13 is Cryptic Writing. 12, The Sick, the Dying, and the Dead. 11, Endgame. 10, Dystopia. 9, United Abominations. 8, The System Has Failed. Between 8 and 7, I would put the MD45 album. It's not a Megadeth album, but really it's a Megadeth album.
I've never heard that. I didn't even know it existed until recently. I saw someone show it and said it was Mustaine. I'm like, shit, I didn't even know that existed.
It's him and this guy, Lee Ving, who is maybe from a band called Fear.
Oh, yeah.
Basically, he sounds like Blaze Bayley. So if you want to hear someone, a lot of the vocal lines still sound like Dave Mustaine.
I'm familiar with Fear. Yeah.
Yeah.
Have a beer with Fear. Yeah,
I wasn't, but when I hear this guy, and I don't know if he sounds at all like Blaze Bayley in Fear, but he does. He sounds like a baritone, sort of ripping into a higher register, and he sounds nice. I enjoy. There's some goofy shit on that album, absolutely. They're singing about sitcoms and junk food and stuff. So some of that you're gonna have a hard time with, but a lot of great riffs, some really good singing by this Lee Ving. And Jimmy DeGrasso's finest moment. The drumming is great. 7, Countdown to Extinction. 6, Hidden Treasures. 5, Killing Is My Business and Business Is Good. 4, Euthanasia. 3, So Far So Good So What. 2, Peace Sells But Who's Buying. And number 1, obviously, Rust in Peace. So it's 18 albums long, 19 if you count the MD45, and I like all of them but 3. So that's a great legacy, and something there aren't that many bands that even get over 10 that are that consistent. So although all of us had some criticisms for this album, and we had some hopes elevated by the 2 lead singles that were then dashed a little bit when we heard the full thing, this is a completely respectable ending. Yeah, The Sick, the Dying, and the Dead would have been a little bit better, and Dystopia, I think, would have been a lot better. I think this is absolutely a respectable showing. I think there's some really good songs up top, and then it ends with some strong stuff. And really happy to, that this ended in a way that's absolutely, another album that I will pull out from time to time and enjoy.
Right on. What were your final thoughts, Alan?
Final thoughts are that, it's, a fine album. It is not an amazing album. It's not a terrible album. It's going to be somewhere in the middle. And as we've said a few times, a lot of the songs, again, it's very sort of, middle of the road. It doesn't have, I don't think it has tracks that are going to become immortal Megadeth classics. When someone's putting together the best of Megadeth 10 years from now, I don't think there's much from this album that's in contention.
No.
But when people are doing their meme videos on the 10 worst Megadeth songs of all time, I don't think anything from this album is really in contention for that either. So it feels like, I think Craig, you used the phrase, it feels like a pretty safe record early on. And that is my takeaway. I don't know where I would rank it in the catalog at this time. For me, the Megadeth catalog is more ups and downs. There are some albums that are among the best metal albums ever. Yes, Rust in Peace and Peace Sells. You're right. Twice they hit absolute A+ gold territory. There are more albums and phases that I'm not as interested in the Megadeth catalog than what Craig has. Long term, if I had to guess, I'd say this album ends up somewhere in the middle of the pack. It's probably not going to be in the top 10, but it isn't going to be in the bottom handful either. So maybe ends up just below the midpoint in the catalog. We'll see. It's we haven't mentioned, but it's a very straightforward album. It's an easy album to listen to. There's stuff to notice, but it's not an album that takes forever to digest or anything like that. So I don't know how long it will stay in rotation. I figure I will probably move on from this album pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And then time will tell how often I do or don't come back to it. Marty, your final thoughts on it?
Yeah, for me, I think of the last three albums, this is my least favorite of the last three, but I will say,
Fair.
I've had to, we planned on doing this. I've had to listen to this record, and I haven't felt like it was a chore. It's a very listenable record. The more accustomed you come to it, and you just realize that it's a solid, albeit safe, Megadeth record with a couple really awesome highlights. I don't know. I've enjoyed listening to it, and I will see myself coming back. This is going to hit the shelf soon, but it's going to come out again. I listen. Yeah. I don't give a crap about 13. There's a couple in their catalog I just don't like. This one is very likable. I think it's a very likable album. I mean, obviously, we all knew that there wasn't going to be the bombast, light show of Rust in Peace 2 to go out on. But I think the legacy is preserved with this. There's nothing torpedoing his name, his career here. And yeah, I like it. I think it's good. I think he did a good job. And I think it's really cool that for his swan song, it's actually charting. It's like number 1 on Billboard.
That's great. Yeah.
That's amazing.
I was really happy to see that. And that's why, we're going to nitpick in it. And that's what we're doing. We're going song by song, sometimes riff by riff. But I wish him all the success for this.
He deserves it. He earned it.
He deserves it. And in terms of what he has had to overcome, forgetting, his baggage with the other band, it's like heroin addiction, cancer, this Vikings disease thing that this is a lot.
Nerve damage.
Yeah.
All sorts of shit. Yeah.
These are a lot of real impediments for him to do something that right now, like I Am War, if that were in the middle of Countdown to Extinction, I would not say, hey, is this song from 35 years in the future? I would not say that. He is recording stuff now that sounds like stuff, it's not the Rust in Peace Part 2 that we may want, but it's the good other second era Megadeth that he's been delivering for a while. And I think that's super impressive. So I definitely wish him the world and the greatest success. I was thrilled to see that it was number 1. And I hope, it's just, it's really well received. And yeah, my hope is if he continues to have ideas, that he becomes a guy who writes stuff for other people and or produces and does stuff that way, because I would be really curious as a as a fan of him, as someone who would name him as one of the all-time great riff writers for the major part of my life, I'd be super curious to hear him write music that he's not concerned about performing live. Like what shackles that would take off, because he wouldn't be concerned about replicating it live, much less replicating it live while singing at the same time. So I hope to see him in music somewhere. I don't know if he has no interest in that, if it's enough, it's taken a toll, and that's great too. But I'm very happy that it has gotten this kind of support. Most of the reviews I've seen have been sort of along the line, and I didn't look at many, but sort of along the lines of ours, of like, oh, it's pretty good. I think people were more excited about the last two, as the three of us were as well.
Yep.
But he's been through more hardship since then, and is now, dealing with something that is essentially like arthritis plus some other condition on his hand. So, hats off. But I'm very, very happy that it's getting that sort of success. And to people who've written off all of the kind of post Rust in Peace or wherever you jumped off, I will point out, like, United Abominations and Dystopia are both really solid, but really the system has failed. For 7 tracks, you are hearing the best stuff that they've done, at post Rust in Peace by far. Unfortunately, that album, loses the thread. But for people who've just dismissed all that stuff, there really is gold on that one. And, Cryptic Writings has the great songs, but also a lot of lemons. So there's more to explore if you accept essentially the heavy metal Megadeth as opposed to the thrash Megadeth. And I like the thrash Megadeth better, but if Megadeth only existed as the band that started on Countdown to Extinction, I would still follow them. That to me is a band worth following, making stuff.
It's a unique sound.
Yeah.
Unique singer, whether you love him or hate him. He's a polarizing vocalist, but it's so undeniably Megadeth.
Yes,
I couldn't imagine anybody else filling the position. So
absolutely.
Well, that's it. That's Craig Zahler. Thank you so much for joining us tonight to talk about Megadeth. It couldn't have thought of a better person to talk about Megadeth on this show. And everybody go check out. Craig's got a whole bunch of stuff going on and has done. So the stuff. I'll put links in the description. Alan, of course, my co-compatriot, and Let's Talk Metal. Link in the description there as well. But Heavy Metallurgy will be back soon with more streams, album club, and, of course, more metal. So stick around, everybody. We'll see you soon. Cheers.
Thank you, guys.